Hi and welcome to Drummers Review. I'm Nolly, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at the 2019 edition of Tama's Imperialstar drum set. As one of the best known drum manufacturers on the planet, Tama doesn't really need an introduction, and their Imperialstar model is one of the most affordable full-size drum kits that they offer. Made out of 6-ply 8mm poplar shells all around, today's kit features a 22x16-inch bass drum, 10x7 and 12x8-inch rack toms, a 16x15-inch floor tom, and a 14x5-inch snare drum. The hardware that it comes with includes a bass drum pedal, a hi-hat stand, snare stand, a straight cymbal stand, though unfortunately our review kit was missing the boom stand and drum stool that should have been included too. New for 2019 are the matching wood hoops on the bass drum, as well as redesigned tom mounts and double-braced hardware. Now this whole kit comes in at about £600, but before we go any further, let's check out a few more playing examples. Our initial impression is that Tama has certainly gone a long way to try and make this kit as attractive as possible, especially given its really quite affordable price point. Setting this kit up is obviously not quite as sturdy feeling as some of the more expensive drums that we've reviewed that have heavy duty hardware, but at the same point it's certainly serviceable and more than adequate for the intended use. The black oak wrap, which features gold tinged grain detail, is good looking and certainly a lot better looking than entry level kits of years gone by. Taken as a whole, the combination of dark timber with chrome hardware makes for a good look that could be equally well suited to a jazz drummer as much as a budding metal player. The drums are fitted with Tama branded single-ply heads all around. We've got clears on both the batter and resonant sides of the toms, a coated batter on the snare, while the bass drum has a smooth black resonant head without a port, and a clear batter head which features an internal muffling ring. Moving to sound, the bass drum has plenty of attack and quite a lot of resonance to it. There's not a lot of low end, rather a fair amount of mid-range that does kind of cloud up the definition, though from the player's perspective it manages to still be quite a satisfying drum to lay into. The rack toms enjoyed a crisp attack and a surprisingly pure note. The 10-inch tom in particular sang, which meant that it did slightly overshadow the 12 that was a little bit more muted by comparison. One thing that we did find is that these rack toms are quite prone to sympathetic resonance from the kick drum and even from one another, which would be the result of a quite basic and unisolating rack mounting system. We even found that the toms sustain differently depending on whether the bass drum pedal beater was touching the head or not. The floor tom shared quite a lot in common with the bass drum. It's got a bright slappy attack and not a whole load of low end, but that articulation did mean it was quite a fun drum to play. The snare drum had quite a soft attack and warm mid-range that we weren't quite expecting from a drum like this. The wire response did feel a little bit coarse, which might have something to do with the fact that the shell doesn't have a snare bed, but for what it is, it's actually quite a defined sounding drum and should be more than up to the task at hand. Tuned up carefully, this kit can certainly deliver clean and melodic tones, even with the stock heads. If we wanted to be critical, we'd talk about that lack of low end, the slight muddiness, and the fact that they do seem to choke out at harder hitting dynamics. But the honest truth is that for the money, we think these are cracking sounding drums that should be more than inspiring enough for the next generation of drummers to enjoy practicing and playing on. Build quality wise, we did notice a few issues. I mean, there are rough spots on most of the shells. The wrap does have quite a noticeable seam again on all of the shells, and particularly the bass drum hoops have quite sharp edges on them. However, we were pleased to find that none of these things seemed to affect the functionality of these drums, and they still tuned up really well, delivered good sounds, and were stable enough under use too. The included double-braced hardware is functional and in line with what you'd expect for a starter kit these days. We were really pleased to see memory locks on the drums. That's something you definitely don't see at this price point very often. And finally, I think it's worth mentioning the bass drum pedal, which we found to be really quite smooth and fast in operation under the foot. Price and performance-wise, we see this kit at the kind of top of the beginner market, perhaps even creeping into the lower end of the intermediate market too. As such, we see it as primarily a student-focused kit, and given that, we can mainly see it being used, for example, in teaching and rehearsal studios. Looking around, it seems like all of the major manufacturers have been putting a lot of effort into cornering this area of the market, with a lot of strong offerings out there. As a result, we can see a lot of people making their choice, perhaps mainly on factors such as aesthetics, brand allegiance, and even artist influence, all of which Tama has in spades. Given the value for money that Tama are packing into this kit, we think it's well worth consideration. But why don't you let us know what you think by leaving us a comment on the video, click subscribe to be notified of future content, and we'll see you next time on Drummers Review.